Hey, what's up YouTube? How are you? So in this video I'm going to be talking about, do you need to read all the classics? One of my good friends asked me that if he needs to read all the classics because he is getting into these classics, the classical literature, the Iliad, Odyssey, or Romeo and Juliet, and Shakespeare, John Milton. He's getting into that in Victorian literature like Charles Dickens and more. So, does he need to read all the classics? Well, I'm sitting here in my room and with my library, and I have many classics in it. Uh, and I have, in my reading journey, for the last 4 years that I've been reading books, I have read the books that capitalists wrote. I have read the books that philosophers wrote. I have read the books that classical literary artists wrote, modern literary artists, uh, postmodern literary artists. Uh, and after reading these books, uh, I have come to some conclusions. And one of the axiom is that life is short and knowledge is much, so much that you cannot uh, internalize all of that knowledge. So what do? The right way to consume literature and to help it build your thinking power, build your analytical skills, is to develop your literary taste and choose some literary artists that you really like because of some particular reasons, because of their rhetoric or their logic or their grammar or their style or their language, use of language, and study them thoroughly. If you study Shakespeare thoroughly and you read uh, constructive criticism on Shakespeare and even unconstructive criticism, that is critical uh, criticism, so you will get to a point in your life in 5 years or so, or in 10 years or so after your study, that you will be better off uh, as compared to somebody who has read all the books which are not so deep. The first axiom was that life is short and knowledge is so much that you cannot internalize all of it. The second axiom is that if a book is worth reading at all, it is worth reading at least thrice. So if you read three great books in a year, it is better than reading 100 shallow books in that same year. So, for example, I in 2020 I have read The Brothers Karamazov, and I'm going to finish Crime and Punishment soon, and I have read Great Expectations. So these are three great books that I have read and I have thought about them, and this has led me to my literary taste is more of the existential taste, that deals with philosophical questions in the literature. So I enjoy that sort of literature, and the literature that is sort of heavy on the mind in its teasing sense. Uh, Reading should be not necessarily a comfortable journey, but not necessarily also too hard that you don't even take that journey. So uh, there's a point that when you reach after your in your reading journey, that after it to uh, you start to get that reading becomes a second habit, a second nature, and not habit but nature. So when you reach this point, you can read anything that is thrown at you, but you won't read anything that is thrown at you because you will uh, be wise enough to discern which book is for you, which book is worth your time. So remember these two axioms, that life is short and knowledge is much, so you should narrow down. Choose one scholar or literary artist: Shakespeare, Tolstoy, Milton, Keats, or Robert Frost, Lord Byron, or George Orwell, or William Hazlitt, or Henry David Thoreau. Choose one artist or thinker: Carl Jung, Nietzsche, anybody. But master his work and master his thought process, and do not beat yourself up if you cannot read some literature. uh, just because somebody told you, an erudite person told you that this book is great book, it should really be on your reading list, but it, that is not necessary. There are many great people, in hundreds. In hundreds, there are great people in hundreds that history has remembered. So choose 3 4 people and great people, and study their works. It is better than mastering nobody. So that was the first axiom. The second axiom is read deep books. If a book is ever worth reading, it is at least worth reading thrice. So remember that. And also you need to remember that it is good to slow down while reading. You do not need to read 100 books a year or 50 books a year. You do not. If you're a business person, and if the book is shallow, because the business literature and the cult of self-help literature, it is, if it is popular, then it is probably not that intellectually rigorous. So choose wisely. If you want to read shallow things because you want some um, tools which can help you make money directly, do it. You take the tool, you apply it. But if you want to elevate your mind and elevate your heart and elevate your soul, then read deep books, and don't beat yourself if you cannot understand them at first. It is a gradual process, and you need to have inner motivation that comes from deep down from your heart. So these are the 3 axioms. Take care, and I will see you next week. Bye.